So the last part of the section, you guys, is putting all the things that we talked about yesterday together. That means your conjunction and disjunction, your if-then, which is your conditional, your biconditional, which is your if and only if. We're putting all those together into one compound sentence. So first we're going to talk about how that works. Okay? And in order to do that, it's kind of a good thing to review. Here are your order of operations. You've seen those, right? You know that when you're simplifying something in math, you first do parentheses, then exponents, then multiply and divide, then add and subtract. That's not new to anybody, right? Well, when you're doing sets and statements, that's what we're focusing on over here. We have a similar order of things that need to happen, okay? Let's take a look at, by the way, let's change this. This should be 3 plus 4 squared. This should be quantity. This should be like that, and this one should be like this. Okay? So looking at these four, only certain pieces of the problem each time is being squared, right? What are you squaring in the first one? Just the 4, right. What about in the second one? The whole thing, so 3 plus 4. What about this one? I hear 2 answers. It's just 4, right? Unless there's parentheses, and that's why this is followed right after it. Unless there's parentheses around the negative, you don't square the negative in there. So here you're squaring negative 4, okay? So when we have parentheses or not, that translates into English 2 different ways, okay? I think we should write this down because I think it'll make life easy for us. But for example, A and C. Where is the negation? It's kind of like when I asked you, what are we squaring, right? What are we negating here? P and H, right? In this case, really it's P or H, right? And this one is P and H. What am I negating here, though? Just P. Same thing here, just P, right? When you're negating a larger quantity, okay, so if you see negation and then followed by a set of parentheses, oh, it's going to kind of cut off there. If you see that, this translates to, in English, one of 2 things. It is not true that, etc. You could say it that way. Or if you prefer, some people like to say, it is not the case that. Okay? So if you see a negation in front of a set, like this one and like that one, the first thing you're going to write down is, it is not true that, and then you just write out what it says. Okay? If you don't have that in front of parentheses here, you translate this like normal. So for the first problem, for A, I would say, it is not the case that, and now I would just write out what is in the parentheses in words. So how do I say this? Exactly. So it's not the case that the student passed the exam or did their homework. But to compare, look at B. Okay? Here I don't start my sentence with it is not true or it is not the case. Here we just translate like normal. So how do I say this? The student did not, very good, pass the exam. And what's that symbol? I kind of wrote over it, but what is it? Or. Let's make it sound better grammatically. How about the student did not pass the exam or do their homework? You guys can play around with the words like that to make it sound okay, because no one really would say the student did not pass the exam or the student did not, or the student did their homework. You wouldn't use the student twice, you know what I mean? So you're allowed to remove words if it makes sense. All right, take 30 seconds. Write out what C and D translate to. Hopefully this is making some sense. Did you find them?
Yeah.
Okay.
Is there anything new?
Just. You know what? In fact, you could just follow that. Oh. Registered in our homework. Follow the steps, and then period. One word.
I mean, but it's done.
And then instead of paying, the access goes there. Okay. So let's just talk these through. All right, who can tell us how to read this in English? Come on, YouTube waits. Yes. It is not the case that the student passed the exam and did their homework. Very good. Everybody agree? Okay. See, this isn't so bad. You will be. No one will actually see you. You'll just be random voices, though, so it's okay. What about D? How do I read that? Yes?
The student did not pass the exam and did their homework.
That is correct. The student did not pass the exam and did their homework. That's when you get upset, right? I did my homework, darn it. And you didn't pass. That's frustrating. Hopefully that doesn't happen, because it shouldn't. Not in this class, anyway. All right, let's turn the page. Take 15 seconds and either individually and then just check with your group mates or together if you want. Just to illustrate what we're doing, we're going to review. I know I said there were no numbers. There won't be on the test, by the way. But how do you write this with numbers and symbols, and how do you write that with numbers and symbols?
Like mathematical.
Yes. Okay, Nancy, what do you think for A?
We did 9 parentheses 4 plus 7.
Good. That's exactly right. What about B? Let's go to the back. Either Janet or anybody in your group. 10 divided by 7 missing 1. Where? There we go. Because the way it's worded, they want you to do 7 minus 5 first and then 10 divided by that, right? So, okay. You guys remember doing these? It's similar when we're doing sentences and writing them symbolically. Okay, I'll do the first one. And a lot of times you can see where the natural separation is. So if you just read it out loud, or even in your head, it should make sense. If a student misses class and does not study, see how you pause there? That's the first set of parentheses right there. Okay? Then the student fails. That's just kind of after it. Okay? So you would go, student misses class is M, and does not study. This gets grouped together. Then the student fails. So that would be F. That's no fun. Okay. You guys kind of see how you can read and it translates very nicely where the parentheses should go if we need them. Okay? Take 15 seconds, maybe 30. Do B and C real quick. All right, Andrew, how do we write B?
I put parentheses M and then the little carrot thing and then not S, still is parentheses arrow F.
Those are all the correct things that you need. I'm not 100% with the parentheses, though. Look at where the sentence has that natural pause when you read it.
Should it be around the not S?
Yes, a student misses class. And if a student does not study, then the student fails. You see how that goes together, that last part?
Yeah.
So then we should have, you guys hopefully can do it nicer. You know what, let me just rewrite it. Should have parentheses around the last half, the last negation of S, if then symbol F. That is, yes, the top one is incorrect. It's close, but you got to read the sentence the way it's written, and that tells you what gets grouped together. Okay, so where's that comma? Where do you pause? Right? What about the third one? Let's go to Leonardo.
Also tilde F. And then and sign. Double arrow.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, tilde. N.
Yep.
And then the and sign.
Yep. There you go. And now where do I put parentheses? That is correct. Very good. Okay. This one didn't really have a natural pause, but you understood that the if and only if is a natural separator between the two parts of the sentence. Okay? We can skip this, and we're almost done. Okay, so the last part here is if we have no parentheses at all, and we just have a bunch of letters and symbols written together, what's the order that we do things in? For example, when you guys were first learning about order of operations, when you saw something like this, you wouldn't just go 9 plus 3 is blah, and divide by 3, and then multiply by 2, and then raise it to the fourth. You had an order, right? What would you do first here? So 2 to the 4, and then? Actually, it's multiplication or division from left to right. So you would actually do 3 divided by 3, and then times 16, I think. Yep. And then, I don't think, but I know it's 16. And then 9 plus whatever that is. Okay? So we would go here, and then here. And this is kind of implied that you can group these together, and that's how you would do the problem. Okay? So it's kind of similar when we have statements. Okay? And actually, I would prefer to write this backwards. So the biconditional symbol, this is kind of like the parentheses, what you would do first. So work in this order. Work backwards. So look for the biconditional first, then look for any if-then symbols, then look for any ands and ors, okay, and then we can worry about negations. Okay, I think with an example it'll make sense. Okay. Now, connectives are the symbols that connect sentences together, statements together, right? So that's your and, that's your or, your if-then, and your if and only if. Those are the 4 types of connectives that we've learned. Okay. The way it's going to work, when you look at a sentence like this one here, you count how many of those you see. So how many of those connective symbols do we have? 4. That is correct. We have 4 of them. The number of parentheses, the number of sets of parentheses that you would actually could use anyway, is always double. Okay? And I'll explain how that works. It's going to be kind of tedious, but let's just go through it. Okay? And what I'm going to do is just write out the sentence, but just really wide, so I don't have to keep rewriting over and over. Okay, so here's the original sentence. Okay? So first, let's just go through step by step where these 8 mysterious parentheses come from. And then I'll talk about how you just get rid of the extra ones that you don't need. Okay? So working backwards, do you see any if and only ifs in here? Right here. So what you're going to do, you just separate both. And so now there's 2 sets of parentheses right there. This whole entire thing gets grouped together. Anything before an if and only if, then anything after gets grouped together. Okay? Next we move backwards. Now we look for any if-thens or any conditionals. We got one right here. So anything, let me use a different color, gets a set of parentheses, and anything after it gets a set of parentheses. Okay? And now we go for ands and ors. Well, I have an or right there. So everything before that gets a set of parentheses, and everything after it gets a set. Same thing with this one. Okay, so now if we're looking at this, clearly, I hope you see that and you're like, why do we have all those parentheses? You're right, we don't need all of them. But that's where the 8 comes from. So if we actually count, I see 2 green sets, 2 black sets, and 4 purple sets. That's a total of 8 sets of parentheses. You guys see that? Okay. Now, if you have anything that is just a single letter inside the parentheses, or just a single letter with a negation, you can pretty much remove them. So this black set right here and all the purple sets, you don't really need them. Okay? It's kind of like up here. Would you ever actually write it this way? No, it's not wrong. You still get the same exact answer, but you don't need to write all those extra parentheses in there. Okay? So the final answer for A, I'm just going to rewrite it right here again. Thank you. So actually, let me sidetrack for a second. If you want to avoid doing all those parentheses, here's what your approach should be. You still start with the if and only if. Then you go to your what? If then. And yeah, normally you'd put a parentheses there, but that's just a single letter, so we don't need it, right? Here we have a few different things going on, so you put a set there. And now, everything that's left is just individual letters. So this is it. This would be your simplified answer, removing all the unnecessary stuff. Okay? Let's see if you guys can get this next example. Okay? If you want to write, because I know yours got formatted goofy like mine, it's supposed to be wider so you have room to write. If you want to rewrite just nice and large and wide so that you can put parentheses in there, feel free. Okay? So take a minute. Question? Yeah, sign out, grab the pass. Actually, you don't just sign out. You're right next door, so I don't think anyone will stop you. So then everything before it, so all, so you go after the R. right. Fernando, pick a number from 1 through 7.
6.
And now from 1 through 3.
2.
2. Juliana. It's okay if you don't know. Tell me what to start with first.
The double arrow.
Okay, so everything before and after, very good. And then?
And then arrow.
So everything before and then after, but this is just a single thing, so we don't need parentheses there. Does that make sense? And that, I think that's it. Yeah, because everything else is just single letters. If you look at the and, that's just a single P, a single Q. So we're done. How many of you guys got that right? Excellent. Oh, I'm amazing at teaching this stuff. Okay.
Whoa. I'm amazed I got it.
Let's look at 9 real quick. A couple minutes, tops. We won't do all of it because the rest of it goes on to page 7. It just got formatted weird, but we'll do the first 3. Okay? So for writing this in symbolic form, first I'm going to, and I would expect you to do the same if it's not defined for you, write out what your letters are going to be. So outside temperature is at least 80. I'm going to use T for that. And I'm going to abbreviate because I'm being lazy. Temp is 80. Okay? The next statement is air conditioner is not working. Well, I'm a very happy person, so I'm going to stay positive here. I'm not going to use the not. I'm just going to say air conditioning is working. And my advice, just to keep things consistent from problem to problem for you guys, would be the same. Even if it says not in the problem, just write it without the negation first. Okay, you can throw the negation in if you need it. And then the third thing we need, house is hot. House hot. I know that's not a statement, but we know what we're talking about there, right? So now we just read and write. So as soon as I see that, I know we need an if-then symbol, right? If the outside temperature is at least 80, so that's which letter? T. Or the air is not working, so that is upside down. You mean regular V? T or not A. And you see that natural separation in the sentence? If the outside temp is at least 80 or the air is not working, then the house is hot. So then this gets its own set of parentheses. And then what comes after that? H. And we do not need a set of parentheses here because it's just a letter. There's nothing else to do with it. Okay? Let's try B. The house is hot is what letter? H. If and only if outside temp is at least 80 and, so that's T, and air conditioner not working again. And here's the implied parentheses. Okay? It's implied in the sentence, and even if we didn't have it, we would put it there because that's how you would separate an if and only if. Okay? Last one. If the air conditioner's not working, so that's an if then. Air not working, again, is negation of A. Then the outside temp is at least 80. If and only if the house is hot. And this is where we do need a set of parentheses based on the way the sentence is written. You guys understand that? It's not like order of operations where we just fill in the parentheses on our own. Okay, they're telling us where to put the parentheses based on how we say this. If the air conditioner's not working, right there's a pause, right? Then outside temp is at least 80 if and only if the house is hot. So you see how that purple stuff goes together? So that gets grouped in its own set. Okay, that would be like the equivalent. You don't have to write this down, but if you had something like this, 3 plus 5 divided by 2, what would you do first? 5 divided by 2. Well, what if I don't want you to do 5 divided by 2 first? What would I have to do? You put parentheses around 3 plus 5. That's kind of like what this is doing. Does that make sense? Normally, yeah, we wouldn't do this like that, but based on how it's written, they're telling us to do it that way. Okay? I hope that's clear. That's the end of the notes.